Ferdinand Marcos for his son Ferdinand Marcos Jr. C. Bongbong Marcos. In this Philippine name, the middle name or maternal family name is Edralin, and the surname of paternal family is Marcos. Ferdinand Emmanuel Edralin Marcos, September 11, 1917 to September 28, 1989, was a Filipino politician, lawyer, dictator, and kleptocrat who was the 10th president of the Philippines from 1965 to 1986. He ruled under martial law from 1972 until 1981 and kept the most his martial law powers until he sought the post in 1986, branding his rule as constitutional authoritarianism under his koalisyong Bagong Lipunan. And one of the controversial leader of the 20th century, Marcos' rule was infamous for its corruption, extravagance, and brutality. And Marcos gained political success by claiming to have been the most decorated war hero in the Philippines. But many of his claims have been found to be false, with United States Army documents describing his wartime claims as fraudulent and absurd. After World War II, he became a lawyer, then served in Philippine House of Representatives from 1949 to 1959 and the Philippine Senate from 1959 to 1965, and he was elected the President of the Philippines in 1965 and president over an economy that grew during beginnings of his 20 years rule, but would end in the loss of livelihood, extremely poverty, and crushing debt crisis. He pursued an aggressive program of infrastructure development funded by foreign debt, making him popular during his first term, although it would be also triggered an inflationary crisis which would lead to social unrest in his second term. And Marcos placed the Philippines under martial law on September 23, 1972. And shortly before the end of the second term, martial law was repealed in 1973 through a fraudulent referendum. The Constitution was revised, media outlet were silenced, and violence oppressions were used against the political opposition, Muslims, suspected communists, and ordinary citizens. After being elected of third term in the 1981 Philippines presidential election, Marcos' popularity suffered greatly due to economic collapses that began in early 1983, and the public outrages over the assassinations of opposition's leader Senator Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr. Later that year, this discontent, the resulting resurgence of the oppositions in 1984 Philippines parliamentary elections, and the discovery of documents exposing in his financial account and false war records, led Marcos to remove him from power and to avoid what could have been a military confrontations in Manila between anti-Marcos troops. Marcos was advised by U.S. President Ronald Reagan through Senator Paul Laxalt to cut cleanly. So Marcos then fled with his family to Hawaii. He was succeeded in President by Aquino's widow. According to source document provided by Presidential Commission's Good Government, the Marcos family stole US dollar of 5 billion to 10 billion from the Central Bank of the Philippines. The PCGG also maintained that the Marcos family enjoyed the decades lifestyle, taking away billions of dollars from the Philippines. So between 1965 and 1986, his wife, that Imelda Marcos, made infamous in her own right by the excesses that characterized her and her husband's conjugal dictatorships in the source of term Imeldific. And to their children, Amy Marcos and Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. are still active in Philippines politics, with Bongbong having been elected president in the 2022 elections. Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos held the Guinness World Record for the largest ever theft from the government for decades, although Genuine took the record down from their website while it underwent periodic review a few weeks before the 2022 presidential election. And also, when it comes in personal life of Ferdinand Emmanuel Edranil Marcos, he was born on September 11, 1917 in the town of Sarat, Ilocos Norte to Mariano Marcos, 1897 to 1945, and Josefa Edralin Mariano Marcos was a lawyer and congressman from Ilocos Norte, Philippines, and he was executed by Filipino guerrillas in 1945 for being a Japanese propagandist and collaborator during World War II. Drawn and quartered with the use of carabaos, his remains were left hanging on a tree. Josefa Marcos was school teachers who would far outlive her husband, dying in 1988, 2 years after the Marcos family left her Malacanang palace when they fled into exile after 1986 People Power Revolution. And Ferdinand was first baptized into the Philippines Independent Church but was later baptized into the Catholic Church at the age of 3. Marcos lived with his common-law wife Carmen Ortega and Mertiza Sujas, 1949 Miss Press photography. They had 3 children and resides from about 2 years at 204 Ortega Street in San Juan. In August 1953, their engagement was announced in Manila Dailies. And Marcos' fourth child with Ortega was born after his marriage to Imelda. Marcos had an affair with American actress Dovie Beans from 1968 to 1970. According to reports by Sydney Morning Herald, Marcos also had affairs with former Playboy model Evelyn Hegiesi around 1970 and sired a child with her. Annalisa Josefa Marcos and Imelda later adopted Amy Marcos. Marcos claimed he was descendant of Antonio Luna, Filipino general during Philippines-American War. He also claimed that his ancestor was a 16th century pirate Limanong who used to raid the coast of the South China Sea. He has Chinese mestizo descendant just like many other presidents. And about education, Marcos studied law at University of the Philippines in Manila. Attending the College of Law, he excelled in both circular and extracurricular activities, becoming a member of university swimming, boxing, wrestling teams, and he was also an accomplished orator, debater, and writer from the student newspaper. And while attending the UP College of Law, he became a member of the Upsilon Sigma PHI, where he met his future colleagues in government and some of his staunchest critics. When he sat from 1939 bar examination, he was bar top-notcher with score of 92.35%. He graduated cum laude. He was elected to the Pi Gamma Mu and the Kappa Pi International Honor Societies, the latter giving him its most distinguished member award 37 years later. And when it comes to presidential campaign, the main article of 1965 Philippines presidential election. Marcos ran on a populist campaign emphasizing that he was a bemal-dealt war hero emerging from World War II in 1962. Marcos would claim to the most decorated war hero of the Philippines, garnering almost every medal and decorating the Filipino and the American. Government could give the soldier included in his reign of 27 war medals and decorations are that one of the Distinguished Service Cross and Medal of Honor. And also, according to Primitivo Major's authors of the book Conjugal Dictatorship of Ferdinand Marcos and Imelda Marcos, the opposition Liberal Party would later confirm that many of his war medals were only acquired in 1962 to aid in his re-election campaign for Senate, not for his presidential campaign. Marcos won the presidency in 1965. And so that's all the information that I can share and I can give to all of you. Thank you. By the way, my name is Emmanuel B. Maghirang and I am a first year college student in PLSP and my course is BSHM.